Okay, let's dive in. We're going deep today on something, well, pretty difficult. Deception. Why it's everywhere, and what tools we actually need to sort of navigate a world that seems full of it.
Yeah, it's definitely full of it. We're looking at this through a couple of lenses today, some behavioral science, particularly Thomas Erikson's work, and also guides on, critical thinking, how to analyze things properly.
Which is so essential because, I mean, statistically, you're surrounded, right? Erickson's book, Surrounded by Liars, kicks off with this, frankly, astonishing statistic.
It really is. Studies suggest, apparently, that two people, total strangers, meeting for the first time, they'll tell 3 lies within the first 5 minutes.
3 lies, 5 minutes.
Right.
That really sets the stage. It tells you straight away that lying isn't some, rare thing. It's common, almost instinctive, very common.
So our mission today really is to get under the skin of why. Why do people lie, both personally and maybe more systematically? And how can we use some frameworks to figure out what's going on, both with the person and the information itself?
Yeah.
Exactly. And maybe we should start with a clear definition. What is a lie? Formally, it's asserting something the speaker knows isn't true, usually with the intent to deceive.
Usually. But the intent, that's where it gets complicated, right? There's a whole spectrum.
Huge spectrum. Most common are probably the ones we tell for self-protection or just to keep things smooth socially. White lies.
Right, the white lies. To avoid conflict, protect someone's feelings, maybe get a bit of social approval.
Or just plain politeness. Sometimes that's seen as more important than, well, strict honesty. Think about dinner parties.
Oh, yeah. Telling your host their, let's say, experimental casserole was wonderful when, well, it wasn't.
Exactly. You're putting the relationship, the harmony, above a factual food review. It's a social calculation.
But then there's the other side, the strategic stuff. Lies for personal gain or jealousy, manipulation.
The source material points to examples like telling your boss, oh, yeah, the report's almost done, when, you haven't even opened the file.
Yeah.
Just buying time.
Or blaming the traffic when you just left late. Convenient.
And that convenience has a cost. Erikson really hammers this point. Relying on dishonesty, even the well-meaning kind, it chips away at real understanding. It erodes trust over time.
He calls it a web of fraud and deceit, doesn't he? You tell one little lie. Maybe a father tells his kid the old dog went to a farm.
Right, the classic farm lie.
And suddenly you're managing this whole narrative, dealing with follow-up questions, maybe inventing more details. You traded long-term trust for avoiding short-term upset.
And you lose control. You're constantly patching the story, reacting to the consequences of that first lie. It must be exhausting and kind of isolating, actually.
Totally isolating. Okay, so that makes sense on the personal level, but what about when this scales up, when deception gets organized? Let's zoom out a bit to fake news and propaganda.
Yeah, the public sphere. Fake news, I mean, the term gets thrown around a lot, but here we're talking about stuff presented as factual reporting that's just inaccurate or maybe presented in a really deceptive way. The intent is to confuse people.
It's not just a mistake, like a typo.
No. This is designed to exploit our curiosity, our emotions, often just for clicks or engagement, or sometimes, yeah, for political sway.
And it's become, well, industrialized. You mentioned those troll farms before, like the Internet Research Agency over in St. Petersburg.
Right. Entities whose whole job is basically churning out propaganda, maybe smearing opponents, pushing certain agendas like influencing elections or propping up a specific leader.
It's wild. And what's really striking is how this modern tech-enabled deception often relies on a really old, frankly depressing idea, the Goebbels quote.
Repeat a lie often enough and it becomes the truth. It's terrifyingly effective because repetition can wear down critical faculties. If you hear something enough times, from enough angles,
It starts to feel familiar, then maybe plausible, then true. Even with data, right? Numbers feel objective, numbers never lie, we say.
But liars use numbers. Absolutely. Statistics can be twisted like you wouldn't believe, distorted, cherry-picked, presented completely out of context, all to prop up some viewpoint that matters more to the speaker than the actual facts.
They count on us just trusting numbers without asking, wait, how did they get that number? What are they not showing me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which actually ties into something else the source mentioned, the cultural angle. Honesty isn't valued or practiced the same way everywhere.
That was fascinating. It mentioned Western society is often focused more on sort of situational needs or personal benefit, which might lead to more frequent situational lying.
Yeah, that's the idea presented. Contrast that with some East Asian cultures where, the source suggests, There's a stronger emphasis on respect, virtue, ethics, often prioritizing honesty even when it's personally inconvenient.
But then what about that Swedish example, the law of Jante, where someone works incredibly hard for years, achieves success, and then says, oh, I just got lucky.
Right, to avoid boasting.
So technically, that's a lie. They didn't just get lucky. But the motive isn't personal gain in the usual sense. It's cultural modesty. How does that fit?
Well, it still fits the formal definition, asserting something known to be untrue. The motive is key. In that case, the lie serves the cultural norm of avoiding social disapproval for appearing boastful. It shows how even deeply ingrained social rules can, in a way, compel dishonesty.
Okay, so it's always about the gap between the statement and reality, but the reason for the gap tells you a lot.
Precisely. And that distinction between the lie itself and the motive driving it, that leads us perfectly into our first toolkit,
Yeah.
the DISC model. We're shifting now from society back to the individual liar's style.
Got it. So this DISC model, it's about understanding behavior, not deep personality, right? And it helps us analyze the messenger.
Exactly. It's crucial because it stops us, hopefully, from mistaking someone's communication style for a lie. Someone direct isn't necessarily lying. They might just be, well, direct. But it also helps spot the motive when deception is happening.
Okay, let's quickly recap the colors. Red is dominance results, ambition.
Yellow is inspiration, enthusiasm being noticed.
Green is stability, relationships, harmony.
And blue is conscientiousness focused on facts, quality, getting it right.
So how does this help us spot lying styles? What does a red lie look like?
Reds, driven by results, tend to lie strategically, with purpose. They want to win or achieve an outcome. So a red lie might involve withholding information or maybe exaggerating benefits to push their agenda forward. It's usually about gaining an edge.
Like maybe delaying bad news about their project until a rival's project is already canceled, something like that.
Could be. Competitive. Then you have yellows. They're driven by acknowledgement, social approval.
So they lie for attention.
Often, yeah.
Yeah.
Or to make themselves look better, more exciting, more central to the story. A yellow might inflate their role in a success, maybe add dramatic flair that wasn't there because the recognition feels vital.
Okay. And greens, they value harmony.
So they lie to avoid conflict, to keep the peace. They hate arguments, they hate making demands. A green might say yes when they mean no, or pretend to agree with something just to prevent a disagreement. It's often passive.
To keep things smooth. Makes sense. What about blues? The conscientious ones focus on facts. How do they lie?
Blues often lie by omission. Because they value quality and accuracy so highly, they might withhold inconvenient details, messy facts, or potential problems that could make their work or themselves look less than perfect. They protect the appearance of quality.
So they don't state a falsehood, they just leave out the awkward truths.
Often, yes. It maintains trust in their perceived competence.
The source mentions some big names, Lance Armstrong, Bill Clinton, Bernie Madoff, Nixon, as examples of these different profiles in action, showing how these underlying motives can fuel really large-scale deceptions.
Right. The point isn't just labeling, it's understanding the pressure point. Why did that person, with that behavioral style, resort to that kind of lie?
So it's about discernment, knowing if you're dealing with, say, a green who's just trying desperately not to rock the boat versus a red who's actively trying to manipulate an outcome for personal gain. That lets you respond more intelligently.
Exactly. Less emotional reaction, more strategic understanding.
Okay, so we have a way to think about the messenger, the DISC model. Now we need a way to analyze the message itself, especially when we suspect informational deception like in fake news or biased reporting.
Right. We need some critical analysis tools. We can borrow from how academics review books or papers, but simplify it into something practical for everyday use. A real critical analysis isn't just summarizing.
No retelling.
No retelling. It's description, analysis, and then evaluation. How good is it? What does it really mean? What's its significance?
So not just what was said, but how well they made their case and what the information is actually worth. This boils down to a few core questions we should ask, right?
Yeah, 3 key ones. First, what's the author's actual purpose and thesis? Lots of sources have a topic, a theme, politics, whatever. But the thesis is the specific point they're trying to prove, that one core idea they want you to accept.
You have to nail that down. Is their main goal just to inform you neutrally, or are they really trying to persuade you of something specific?
Crucial distinction. Second question, what's their main method? Are they primarily explaining things with facts and evidence? Or are they building an argument, trying to convince you? Description, narration, exposition, or argument, knowing the main mode tells you a lot.
Okay. And the third question. This feels really important for catching subtle lies. How well did they achieve their goal? And maybe even more importantly, what did they omit?
Bingo. Omission. That's where the sophisticated stuff often hides. Selectively presenting data, ignoring studies that contradict their point, not mentioning known flaws or problems.
Leaving stuff out deliberately.
Exactly. A good critical thinker knows that a source can fail, not just by saying wrong things, but by strategically not saying important true things. What's missing is often as revealing as what's present.
That feels like a really powerful, practical set of questions. Purpose and thesis, method, and especially what's been left out.
Put it together, and you've got tools for the messenger, the
Mhm.
DISC model, and tools for the message, this critical analysis framework.
Yeah, it brings us back in a way to where we started, that idea of the cost of convenience. Erikson uses that example of like the tired husband who just lies every night, says, yeah, sure, let's watch a movie, just to avoid a fight about spending quality time.
Right. He picks the 10-second lie, the easy way out, instead of the maybe difficult but ultimately more honest conversation.
And we know honesty is hard sometimes. It takes guts to face uncomfortable truths, whether it's in our relationships or in the news we read. So the final thought maybe is this. If we all lie sometimes because it just feels easier, what's the real cost, personally and maybe societally, of always choosing that quick, easy lie over the truth that might actually eventually be liberating?
It's that long-term erosion of trust, isn't it? That happens
Yeah.
slowly. If you're constantly navigating your own little deceptions and dealing with everyone else's, genuine connection gets harder and harder. Is avoiding that momentary discomfort really worth damaging the foundations of your relationships? That's something, you have to answer for yourself next time you feel tempted. Convenience or clarity?